This is our release webinar for our new 5.4 release, which we are very excited about. We've really done quite a number of good things with the technology and the platform. We're really pushing it forward and really getting some good focus in some key areas, which I'm going to talk about today. As Beverly mentioned, I'm joined today by Mike Calori. Mike and I have been working together for a number of years now, about 3 years, and I work very closely on the product side, working very closely with the development teams in building the product, and Mike works more on the customer side, and together we collaborate almost daily on building the best solutions we can possibly provide. And Monitor version 5.4 is definitely one of these solutions. So we've got a number of things I want to get through today, quite a lot of content, so I'm going to jump right in here. We do have quite a diverse audience today. We have a number of people that are already CaseWare Monitor users of the system, and we have a number of people that have never seen it before. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, let everybody know what CaseWare Monitor is and what it does, just so we're all on the same page. And then we're going to jump right into what we've done with this release and how we've really pushed the technology forward. A few things on the remediation side of things, some of the enhancements we've done there, how we've focused on investigations and the improvements we've made in that department, as well as some really cool technology with some real-time onboarding. And then I'm going to hand off to my colleague Mike at the for a discussion on advanced analytics and what some of the breakthroughs are we're making in that department. So CaseWare Monitor is really a detection platform right through to the remediation. And really what this is it's a continuous controls monitoring platform. We use this to take data from just about any source system. We run some analytics against it, and we generate some alerts based on what those analytics find. And these alerts could be issues, they could be anomalies in the data, it could be any number of things. For today's webinar, we're going to strictly focus on procurement fraud, waste and abuse. We do a lot of work in the anti-money laundering space as well, and we have done a number of enhancements in this release in regards to anti-money laundering, but I'm not going to go into too much detail on those today. We did another webinar a couple of days ago. Andrew Simpson, our Chief Operating Officer, did an excellent presentation on the advancements we've made in that department. So if you are interested in the anti-money laundering information, please check our website and grab the recording of the webinar there. In addition to finding these alerts, we then remediate the alerts. We push them through workflows, and this ensures that our remediations are consistent. We make sure that information is being passed to the right people. We can handle things such as escalations. We can hand things off to other users in the system. So if there's supervisors, approvals required, or maybe it needs to go to different departments, and that's really where the workflows come in. And then, of course, we wrap all of this with our insights. And at the end of the day, we provide some really good information and insights in terms of your controls program and how you're performing. In addition to this, you can build reports and insights on any phase within the product. So be it at the detection stage, what types of the alerts are coming in, how long are investigations taking, and of course, what's happening with remediations. And so the insights cover the entire breadth of the platform. The use cases for the application are so varied. We use this product in a number of different industries, very common in obviously finance departments with accounts payable, vendor invoices. We do a lot of work with purchasing cards, so companies that use corporate credit cards and managing the spend with those. It's also being used for IT security controls. We have some companies that are using it for in the mining industry that are using it for quality assurance checks and so on and so forth. So the applications are huge, and as I already mentioned, excuse me, we also do anti-money laundering as well, which is another big part of financial crimes, and that's really where we're focused these days, is on the financial crime side of things. This is really a good image of what the pillars are of our application. Of course, we've got the user experience at the top, which is everything you would see and interact with in the system. But in behind it, we have a number of foundation pieces or components that build this product up. And we've been doing a lot of work in these various areas. So customer vendor due diligence is a hot topic these days. A lot of people want to do more screening. For those of you that are aware, the universal beneficial ownership laws are coming out very shortly, and today it's really just applicable to the banking industry. but what we're hearing is it's going to potentially be applied to supply chain management and so on. So a lot of companies are getting to things like risk profiling, doing some screening of lists to make sure that the vendors or the customers that they're about to do business with are legitimate and are going to be a good entity to onboard with the organization. We're also doing a lot of work in the identity verification field. So this comes into play a lot with the money laundering side of business, making sure that customers are who they say they are. And then, of course, this all rolls into our transaction monitoring. So we do transaction screening, where we have the capabilities and the abilities to potentially block transactions if they don't screen appropriately, or let them through, or just monitor. And then, of course, fraud detection, which is a hot topic these days. And just to be clear as well too, when I mention fraud, I'm not just speaking about intentional fraud. I'm talking about unintentional as well too. Like, our system is used quite often to capture things like data entry errors and so on and so forth, which at the end of the day could lead to significant loss and waste within your organization, but it's not intentional by any means. Then we get into regulatory reporting. Again, this is very applicable to the anti-money laundering space. We've built in some great enhancements to support the GoAML platform for anti-money laundering regulatory reporting. That allows organizations using our platform to almost nearly 100% automate their submission of regulatory reports and really improve their efficiencies internally. So again, if you are interested in anti-money laundering, please reach out to us. We're going to provide an email address and web link at the end of this. Please reach out and talk to us a little bit more about that. Then we get into the actual data management, which is at the bottom half of this diagram, where we start to bring the data in, the transactions, potentially customer vendor data, such as your customer masters, your other masters you might have within your systems. We can cross-reference and look at events that are happening, as well as third-party data as well. Bad press is becoming a more hot topic these days for people to bring in and then match that and screen their customers up against it. And so that's what we mean by third-party data, just about anything that's available out there. We bring this into our repository, and from there, the analytics and investigations and remediation is really what takes hold. So on the analytics side, I'm not going to dive too deep. I'm going to let Mike cover that towards the end of the presentation. But on the investigation side, we've done a lot of great work in building up a case management tool within the platform. We're getting into things such as decision learning, which I'm going to talk about in more detail in a few minutes, as well as the workflows, which I already mentioned, which really ensures consistency when you are remediating and investigating. And then, of course, enterprise search, which is our one of the biggest features we've added for this release that I'm going to talk about in a lot more detail. So the focus for this release is really threefold. And for those of you that have used CaseWare Monitor and have attended our webinars in the past for previous releases since version 5, the bullet on the left is nothing new. This is something we pride ourselves on and we are continually striving for. We always want to make it as easy as possible for individuals to remediate issues within the platform. We've come to the realization that CaseWare Monitor is not the type of application that people live in all day. A lot of the times, especially when we're talking about potentially procurement fraud, it's finance people that are using this product. And finance people generally live in their ERP, they're processing payments, maybe it's a controller, you're running reports and things like that. And so what we strive to do with the platform is make sure it is easy, quick, and seamless for people to get in, resolve the issues, and then get out. And as part of that, make sure they have all the information they need to make the informed decisions and remediate things. And so that's always going to be a focus of ours. We've done some good work in this department with this release. In addition to that, smarter anomaly detection. Again, this is referring to the analytic components and what we're starting to do there in the advanced analytics space, making sure we not only detect the issues that are important, but also weed out those false positives so we're not wasting effort looking at things we don't need to look at. And then, of course, when we do detect issues, we want to make sure the investigations are thorough, make sure people have all of that information they need to make the important decisions. So I'm going to jump right in here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements we've made to the remediation process, what we've done to make things quicker, easier, a lot more familiar, I guess is a good way to put it. A couple little pieces here that we've put in. So we've stepped up a little bit on the navigation side of things. We've added some quick links that allow people to quickly jump to different folders. For those of you that have used the application before, this is going to look very familiar. For others, this is just a quick way to hop around, so you can go from the items that you're assigned to directly to items that are potentially overdue, or maybe you're working with a queue with a number of other employees in your organization. So it's a quick way to kind of bounce around, as well as search. The search we've put in, we've found that a lot of people in our alpha environments that have played with it, they were using this to get around the system more so than clicking on folders and moving around tabs. It's just a lot easier to use search, and we know that this is true also as well when people are surfing on the web. People generally just use search to navigate. It's become kind of the de facto navigation, and so we're really investing a lot in this. And then, of course, performance. We've invested significantly into the performance of things, especially with the search. The search performs incredibly quickly, which is impressive. When we were doing our original benchmark tests, we did not notice a difference between 100,000 records and 10 million records, and it responds in split seconds, which is just fantastic. As well as the other parts of the application as well, we've invested and re-engineered in some areas to make sure that performance is always up there. And in this version especially, we've gotten through about half of the performance changes we really want to make with the application. We're going to finish the others for our next release, obviously, but we did manage to tackle and affect everything that would affect our end users at the end of the day. A really cool feature we've added in this version to help out and assist with remediations is the ability to batch attach files. And so this is what this allows you to do is, with the click of a button, the system will go through, parse a folder, and if it finds any documents that correlate with an alert that's in the system, it will automatically attach it for you. So this is really handy for organizations that have the ability to export invoices from their financial system, or maybe your company utilizes a scanning solution where signed manifests are coming in and they're getting scanned in. Well, these can all be automatically attached. So if there's an alert with a particular shipment, let's say, for example, the invoice, if it's in the folder, will automatically get picked up and applied. So again, this goes back to just making it easier for people to remediate because they have the information at their fingertips. They don't have to hop systems or bounce back and forth or go from CaseWare Monitor to the financial system to look something up, or potentially, go through a folder of scanned images and so on and so forth. So this is just a really cool feature that we're really pleased about. We've also added something called workflow decision learning, and this really ties back nicely with the advanced analytics work we've been doing. This is a phenomenal tool, and again, going towards making remediations easier, what we determined is the easiest way to remediate something is if you don't have to remediate it at all. And so what we've put into the application is a way for the system to learn based on previous decisions what steps were taken, and then automatically repeat those steps so that particular work items or particular alerts within the system, you don't have employees wasting effort on them to rework it or do it again. And let me draw a very simple example for you. So let's say, for instance, we're dealing with a purchase card scenario where your company employs a corporate credit card system, and you have a policy that says people are not allowed to make expenditures for technology. They're not allowed to make IT expenditures. They're not allowed to buy gadgets and gear and stuff like that. And so you have this rule in place. CaseWare Monitor would look at the spend that your employees are making with their credit cards, and if it finds some technologies, it would potentially raise an alert and say, hey, this is an alert because somebody made an unapproved purchase. Well, let's say, for instance, Bob, who's the IT manager, let's say he's exempt from this rule. Well, very easily, what you can do is by using this workflow decision learning, if Bob makes purchases, rather than every time Bob makes a purchase on his card for technology, rather than somebody going through and looking at it to say, oh yeah, it's Bob, he's allowed to do that, the system can do that for you. And this is just a great time saver for people. Now, some people look at this and they get a little bit afraid. They think, well, it's a little scary if I automate things, what if the system makes a mistake and so on and so forth. And of course, that's always a concern anytime you automate something. But with the visualizations and the dashboarding capabilities we have available in the product, it's very easy to monitor this and make sure that it doesn't go off the rails. Make sure things are, you don't see any significant spikes or valleys in your reporting to see that, okay, things are still trending the way they should. The other thing as well too is there's a lot of intelligence behind this. You can make it configurable in such a way that it's, maybe you only do this for immaterial types of purchases or immaterial types of transactions. So say the transaction is less than $20, or maybe you always want to have the decision made by a human if it's over $1,000, whatever the case may be. So this is something that's really, really going to help a lot of organizations. It's really going to minimize the amount of work and rework they might have to do for things that are somewhat repetitive. And of course, I'm sure you can all relate with within your organizations when it comes to transaction processing. There tends to be a fair amount of repetition, and a lot of the time, the decisions people make are the same decisions they make time and time again. We've also found that using a feature such as this, it helps with consistency as well. When we were alpha testing this with one of our clients in the UK, they were dealing with a situation where the decisions being made were not always consistent. It really depended on who picked up the transaction and what decision they made at the end of the day. And so by implementing something like this, it gets decisioned once, and then the system does it that way going forward. And of course, it's all key-based, highly configurable, and so it can really be customized and catered to whatever requirements or needs your organization has. The next big piece we worked on is making investigations deeper, better, stronger, making sure people had all the information they needed to make informed decisions when they're working with alerts within the system. And we took this a little bit further. We didn't just build a search tool that searches our application quickly and seamlessly. We've actually opened this up and we've put the engineering in place to tie in some external sources. So the first piece we've brought in is what we call the export control lists. And for those of you that are dealing in manufacturing or potentially the import and export of goods across various countries, you'll be familiar with these export control lists, which are basically the dual use goods and military use goods, where there's legislation in a number of countries that says you're not allowed to move these products around. Maybe it's ammonium nitrate that could be used in the production of bombs, but it could also be used as, fertilizers and so on and so forth. And so what we've done is we've brought these lists in, we've indexed them, and now you can actually search. When you're doing a search, if you type ammonium nitrate, not only would you get a hit if there's alerts in the system that have that search term, but you also get a hit on these export control lists. And really where we're going with this is we're actually going to start, or what we're going to be making available to clients is the ability to tie this in not just with static sources, but also your own internal systems. So maybe the case might be is you want CaseWare Monitor to, when you do a search, to be able to search your customer or vendor master that's sitting in your ERP system. Maybe you use SAP Business One and you want to make these masters available to CaseWare Monitor. Maybe you want to tie it in with your HR system, so that when you're doing a search, for instance, if you see spend from somebody, and you can also search and see within the HR system, you might be able to see spend for a certain employee, but then very quickly see, oh, there's a record in the HR system that says this person was on vacation at this point in time. And so this is really going to really change things for investigators, make it a lot easier for them to find what they need to make these decisions. It's going to allow them to not have to hop systems as much anymore, which I know is a big pain for a lot of people these days. And so we're seeing a lot of potential opportunity in this area. The way the search works is just like you would expect with any current search tool that's out there. Very simply, there's a search box in the application. It's available from, it's available from just about anywhere within the application, and very easy, like Google. You just type in the terms you want to search for. So here's a very simple example. I typed in Stacy, and it pops up as you're typing. It starts finding results and starts displaying them. So right now I can very quickly see that, oh, I was working on this alert for Stacy, and well, hey, there's 2 cases for her as well in the application, as well as a number of other alerts, and maybe there's something going on with this person. And so it's very, very easy now to just quickly see what's happening within your environment and what other alerts are out there, what other pieces of information do I need to tie in. In addition to just the basics, what I call the basic search, which is just the search bar on the main page, we've also built an advanced search screen that allows you to further refine your search results. So we work with a lot of large organizations. In fact, one of the organizations we were working with when we were building this, they have about 12 million records in their system. And so what we found when we did our first cut of the search is almost immediately there was just too many results to deal with. And so what we did is we built this simple screen. So when you type a search, if you click the little button, it'll bring you to this screen, which allows you to really add some filters, really tighten it up and refine that search so you can find exactly what you need. And we've tried to keep this following standard conventions that you would experience with normal online shopping and other online tools. Very simple, a couple check boxes that further refine the results. So maybe you're just looking at work items or alerts. Maybe you just want to see cases, or if you're in the AML space, you just want to see regulatory reports. As I mentioned, we're including export control lists, which I should also add, if you don't use export control lists in a configuration, you turn off the checkbox, this won't even show up for you. Maybe you only want to see items that are open or closed or both. And then similar to email, if you only want to see items that have attachments or comments or indicators attached. In addition to this, and we've got a little example here, in addition to this, we've added a drop down to add other filters as well. So things like date ranges, users that have touched the potential, users that have touched these alerts, that have processed them. Great use case for this is, let's say a colleague of yours calls in sick and they're quite ill and they're not going to be back in the office for a week. Very simply, you come into the search, add a filter for this particular user, and you can see all the items that they were working on. So you can make a decision as to whether or not these things need to be dealt with immediately, or if they should wait until a person returns. And again, similar to normal online technologies, it's really a filtering tool. Really allows you to just narrow those results, really tie it down. Another nice addition to the application is what we call our real-time onboarding due diligence. And this is really, again, tying back a little bit to remediations, trying to prevent, not trying to prevent, but minimizing the number of alerts that come into the system after the fact. It's a lot less work for individuals to catch an issue before you start transacting. So let me give you an example. You're bringing on a new customer. This customer is going to be purchasing your product, and you want to onboard them, and they're a significant sized customer that they're looking for pretty significant credit terms and so on and so forth. With this API that we have built, it allows you from your onboarding system to use the CaseWare monitor technology and screening engines and data checks that we have to screen and verify this customer and then feed that information back to your onboarding system. So you can make an informed decision from your onboarding system. You don't have to go to another application to do this screening. We also run analytics against it as well, and we can create risk scores to bring more information available. Say you have an internal policy where you don't onboard anybody that's higher than high risk, higher than a 75 out of 100 score, things like that. And so it really allows customers to really tie their systems together, make sure the group that's responsible for onboarding has access to that information that they need, make sure that the data sources are being checked against and verified, the analytics are being run to make sure that everything is okay before you go ahead and onboard. And again, this is where it helps with remediation, in that if you just onboard, or maybe you have two different departments that work in this area, if you just onboard a customer, let it kind of start transacting, and then find out after the fact, oh, this customer is on a sanctions list, or this customer is under litigation or has a class action suit against them, or whatever the case may be, you now are not in a recovery mode. You've prevented this from actually getting to that point, which is very, very powerful. We're seeing a real uptake in this, especially in banking, especially with a lot of the new regulations that are coming out, but also supply chain management. I mean, companies now are trying not to warehouse as much inventory, so it's very important you have reliable suppliers, especially if you're manufacturing or warehousing. You want to make sure that these customers are reliable. What is out there. And again, this ties into our screening tools that we use. It's not just for money laundering. I mean, we can tie into just about any data source. We do work with a lot with Thomson Reuters. We do a lot of work with Dow Jones. We've got clients using them. We've been doing some work recently with RDC as well as Dun & Bradstreet. There's just a wealth of information out there, and this technology makes it really nice for your other systems to be able to take advantage of this this tool. Now, the other thing with CaseWare Monitor is, as I mentioned earlier, is it is a continuous monitoring platform. And so what's nice about this, and what's very common, is companies can not only screen during the onboarding process, but also set up periodic screens as well, and they all happen in the background. And this is very important because you know, you could have onboarded a potential vendor, say 5 years ago, but in that time, a lot could have happened. Things could have occurred. That vendor is now maybe a high-risk vendor. Maybe you don't want to be doing business with them. So you can actually use this API, again, to continuously monitor the entities that you're doing business with, be it your customers, your vendors. I've even seen some customers of ours use this for their employees, looking at their HR systems. They've tied in to review employees and see, you know, if anything has changed with the status of their employees in the HR system, then they can modify the risk level of that particular employee. And again, this is a very fringe case, you know, especially when you're the situation I'm talking about was more in a banking situation where people had they were dealing with large amounts of money and so on and so forth. So you wouldn't necessarily put this in place for average organizations, but just trying to draw up a nice example so people can understand really the applications of this are so diverse that it could really be applied just about anywhere. So I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague Mike. He's going to speak to us about all the great work we're doing in the advanced analytics space and how that all ties in with fraud and waste and abuse.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it. Great job. Hope everyone is doing well today. So what we wanted to do was to take the time to show you, based on as our application continues to evolve from version 5.3 to 5.4, we know that the environment around us continues to evolve as well. And one of the trends that continue to occur is that rules-based analytics are getting to a point where they're just not enough. And there is honestly no way to know all of the potential unknowns. As we continue to work diligently with our different clients, corporate clients and organizations, and assess all of the risks that we can find at any point in time, create rules-based analytics around those, right? One of the greatest things that is to our advantage is leveraging the ability to use machine learning, to have the ability from going and leveraging the data that you do know, the data that you're comfortable with, right? Every structured data that we were really talking about when leveraging the prior data sources, as well as the data you don't know. So you can see that we're starting to get into that now by leveraging the new search capabilities, right? So you're looking at social media, spatial data, not potential anomaly AML predictive models. So you can even start to move towards potential unstructured data as well. And when we start to bring all of that together, it really does evolve into great insights and intelligence to allow us to truly optimize our capabilities. So just put together a quick little roadmap here as we progress, right, through the intelligence of analytics. So of course, one of the first parts that you get into, right, is looking at potential rules-based analytics. What is the particular focus that we want to get into, how to leverage structured historical data, and ensuring that we bring all of those great insights, trends, and information up to the surface so that they can be remediated appropriately. So descriptive analytics, right, is what we're talking about. And as we continue to progress within it, we start to take our next steps in what we call a predictive analytic point of view, right? So the sophistication starts to really incorporate itself, and we start to help predict what's out there. So again, we're still leveraging historical data and information. However, by taking that information and putting it through particular algorithms, we can now start to predict its outcome. So is it now potential fraud? So before, when implementing all of these rules-based, we always talk about taking a proactive approach towards wanting to mitigate risk, wanting to stop fraud and abuse. And now with these potential predictive models, you have the ability to do so by leveraging these algorithms. One of the great examples of predictive analytics as well that really hit home with one client was when we stop fraud. And we help the client stop fraud based on certain factors. We identify risks, we identify the fraud that's occurred, and we were frauded for $150,000. And the company goes, oh my goodness, we stopped it. But we were still frauded for $150,000. And a very simplistic position of predictive analytics can actually help calculate, yes, but what if that fraud was not stopped? What if from July to December that fraud continued? What would the impact actually be to the company? And it shows through the algorithm that the impact would not have been just 100,000, but would actually continue to double, triple, quadruple to about 425,000. So technically, by stopping this fraud, we actually stopped an impact of 325,000, as well as remediated the issue, identified the source of the problem, and ensured that we could mitigate that risk so it doesn't happen again. The next stage is, of course, is when you start to look at prescriptive analytics, right? So how can you achieve the best outcome, right? What should I do if I feel somewhat constrained by this at any point in time? And this is where we start to look at exactly here, the key element, optimization. Starting to ensure that we create the right models, leveraging the right data to ensure that we are getting the best performance out of the engines and algorithms possible, so that when we're looking at all of the different types of analytic capabilities, we could start to deploy across different platforms all of the different types of advanced analytics to even simulate particular scenarios and use cases, so that this algorithm continues to learn as you continue to decision in your remediation. So here are some quick little overview of our capabilities, right? So when you start to deploy these advanced analytics, we can see you have the predictive analytics I was speaking about. You have segmentation and clustering, which we'll take a look at. Anomaly detection. Text analytics, of course, is one great one, which is really, really handy and getting more and more popular these days. Your social media and content. All right, and as you continue, real quick, we just wanted to show you some benefits as you progress, of course, right? So shorter model development as you continue to do a refresh time. So absolutely, as you go through a learning stage of the model, we always know that that model, once you've taken the time to leverage the appropriate services team here at ADS, and we've trained this model based on all of your data outcomes and situations, it will continue to develop and adapt. You also can see the predictive models and insights on what they can do. So again, when we're talking about the prediction fraud, looking at arrears, so on and so forth, and the augmentation of the current system. So absolutely, it takes it to the next level, right? So when you start with rules-based analytics and you're getting to a point where you're comfortable with your environment and you know that you're satisfied with what's being built, and you take the time to say, you know what, what's next? How do we take it to the next level? Where do we go from here? That's really when advanced analytics can really kick in. Here's a quick example, very, very simplistic overview of anomaly detection, right? So when we're looking at potential patterns in behavior, so if you're looking at behavior of certain characteristics based on people's age or gender and the usage of their cards, whether it's their ATMs, are they always using the ATM? Are they always going over the counter? How do they update their books? What type of transfers do they do? Are they just paying bills? Are they actually sending people money? So on and so forth. By using all of these different characteristics and the historical behavior of that information, we can really start to classify these particular people into different segments, which then allow us to identify, based on this profile and the activity that's occurring for that profile, here are the particular people that seem to be standing out. Or one very simple point of view is when looking at gambling. So when you're looking at the betting industry, right? So you're going to the casino, there are many different types of what we call patrons, i.e. clients, that come in. And based on their age, their gender, their origin, how far they live from the casino as well, all that information brought together allows us to create a very clear, concise profile to understand what their behavior actually looks like and how we can identify certain betting patterns that stand out. Then you can start to look at predictive analytics. It's a very simple model down below. Of course, it could get very complex, but we wanted to make sure that we were showing these things as easy as possible to help everyone better understand at a high level its capabilities. So again, it's using existing potential cases, whether fraudulent, abusive, or abuse based in the system, right? So to identify patterns. So what we're starting to look at is based on prior information, it starts to create a learning model of what would predict an outcome for the information or transaction that's happening. So hey, very simply said, we've been able to identify fraud in these particular areas. This is the criteria that was used. So very simple: gender, credit scores, their age, are they a risk or are no risk based on their transactions. The next one here is, again, a very simple picture, but it does get very intense, is network linking. So this starts to allow you to start to bring in all the different types of activity that's occurring. So whether it's within the system on sanctions list screening, whether it's profile risk activity, and starting to see how all of this can be related, how we can link one person or organization to another, as well as the activity that's going on, right? So using these static or transactional data, again, inherent risk-based information. Here's a quick overview of how the analytic engine functions based on rules and models set in place. So you can see on the left side, you have your rules-based scenarios. All right, in analytics, you then start to have your models that are set in place. Here, an example, we put anomaly and predictive. We bring it all together to create a scoring engine, which outputs a potential customer or vendor risk score. That risk score is then brought forward to the analyst to then start to do a decision. So a particular action within the workflow is, will I investigate? Do we just continue to monitor it as good? Do we accept the transaction? Do we block the activity? So on and so forth. And again, what's critical here is that arrow that ends up going right back into this model. So again, it feeds the machine learning. We are going to the next step, that you could actually not just create rules within your workflow to help making these decisions, but all of those rules and information, as well as the outcome of your actions within your workflow, goes right back into your model. This machine learning has the ability to adapt to that information and ensure that your false positives automatically start to get reduced as you progress. We wanted to put together some quick little use cases just to help you guys out. All right, so again, areas where this can come in handy. So if a vendor continues to submit non-PO invoices, when the others, there are clusters that they are. So what that means is certain vendor types with this type of activity and this type of material and inventory that they're producing tends to have purchase order capabilities with their invoices. If for some reason these two little vendors here that follow these exact criteria continue to have invoices paid with no purchase orders. It could break down strong correlation between the requester and the vendor. Using network analysis, you can detect unknown relationships between vendors and employees. So again, this is looking at direct and indirect relationships. So it doesn't have to be a one-for-one. All right. A quick example of that is you could have an employee that's approving duplicate transactions for a particular vendor. That vendor is actually a known related or linked through a relationship to another vendor that is actually known on the sanctions list, and that particular sanctions list vendor is sharing particular address or phone number information with the employee. So right back, all three are interconnected directly. You can identify invoices for product classes that are outliers based on vendor types, existing of POs and price ranges. Again, these are very, very high-level use cases. You could identify unusual high contract wins for certain vendors. So looking at, based on RFP requests or requirements, which vendors have unusually high wins compared to others. You can ensure that we can actually have data enrichment with third-party sources, so start to leverage all of the other areas as well, as mentioned prior by Michael. So World Check, D&B, Country Corruption Index, so on and so forth. So lastly, what we wanted to do was put together some quick takeaways and ensure that we have the ability to bring all this together, right? So what does this new version have the ability to offer? Is to help you make smart decisions, right? So smart detection of the issues and anomalies through complex issues, reduce false positive, but also uncover potential schemes, right? That could otherwise get undetected through potential rules-based. And the business engagement for what is important to reduce the effort, right? Again, try to automate as much as possible. Try to evolve with the environment around us, right? Making sure that the remediation investigation capabilities is much easier, much more efficient and comprehensive. And of course, a big hit again is the machine learning capabilities within our model that allows us to continue to improve the process over and over and over.